The college football experience, Dantabase top 25 week 9 reaction show on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Underdog has just added pick up Scorchers where you can win 100 times the amount of money you enter. All right. That's right. Turn $5 into 500 in just one game. Plus every Sunday, they're giving away $100,000. Use the promo code SGPN at Underdog Fantasy for 100% deposit bonus up to $500. We're also brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting research platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use the promo code SGPN and get 50% off your first month and start making smarter bets today. Plus, the NBA is back, and so is the NBA Gambling Podcast. To help celebrate that, we're giving away an NBA Gambling Podcast hoodie. Head on over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA dog for all of those details. Once again, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA dogs. And remember, as always, folks, to let it ride.
This is Brian Bosworth, aka The Boz, and you're listening to SGPN. Let it ride, brother. Peace out. Boz out.
Yes. 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 Woo! Welcome. Welcome to the college football experience. Dantabase top 25 week 9. I just sound like a jackass. How you doing, folks? How you doing? It's a wonderful world. And yeah, look, we're talking college football. Dantabase top 25. Once a week I get a comment saying, "Why are you wasting your breath with this stupid fucking list?" Well, because it's called a fucking talk show. And that's what we do. I appreciate those messages because, I think this makes more sense than any ranking system out there. And I will continue to yell at Cloud for the rest of my days if need be. All right, folks. If you have never listened to the Dantabase Top 25, it is it's just, to me, we rate the top 25 teams based off of resume, not based on a popularity contest of like, oh yeah, that team, I've heard of Florida. Yeah, they won the national championship back with Urban Meyer. Let's put them in the top 10. Let's put them in the top 15. You know, so we try to look at the resume and actually find out the best resumes and make the most sense of it. And if you schedule lightly, you should be penalized for it, just like you should be with anyone ranking. But you know, unfortunately, these voters, I don't think really watch the sport like we do. So this is me shitting on them. Folks, if you're wondering who the hell you're listening to, my name is Colby Swiggin Dantabase Dad, aka Pick Dundee. That's not a pick. This is a pick.
He was raised in the land down under, where a man thinks on his feet, speaks with his fists, and lives by his wits.
When Dundee happened, he was a superstar.
I'm probably drinking too much and celebrating too much and not sleeping. Would have killed a normal man, but no, that's gone. The medical advice I got from that was like being hit by lightning. Pretend it never happened and get on with your life.
The medical advice that I can give you is never listen to the real top 25 rankings. I don't think in my whole life they've ever had that. Accurate. Maybe 1 year, maybe 1 week. I'd have to dive deep. But if I had to bet, I would bet against it. Yeah. Let's jump into the AP, the Associated Press. You ever met someone from the Associated Press? I have. I didn't come away super impressed by their football knowledge or basketball knowledge. Not to say that I'm some fucking beautiful mind here, but I'm just saying we watch all the fucking games, and I think that's an important ingredient. And we, we don't look at it from a slanted slate, which I believe they do from the start, and the rankings kind of show that from the start. When Georgia beats UT Martin, even though that Georgia team from last year has a bunch of players gone, they still have them number one. So that's a perfect example of, to me, they're just phoning it in a way. Let's just start at number 25. And look, I have last week's rankings available. We can go through also what the AP is doing. And but for me, at number 25 right now is the Kansas State Wildcats.
W-I-L-D, Cats. W-I-L-D, Wildcats. W-I-L-D, Cats. Wild about the Cats. W-I-L-D, Cats.
I mean, that song is just fire. It's a heater. Look, Kansas State has 2 losses. One was at Mizzou in an old rivalry game. Mizzou currently 7-1, and that was by a 64-yard field goal. I think 63-yard field goal, the longest kick in SEC football history. It was a tie game besides that. And then their other one was on a short week in Stillwater, and Oklahoma State is currently they're ranked. So 2 road games against ranked teams. Currently, I don't think that many schools have 2 road wins against currently ranked teams, let alone winning records. You know what I mean? 2 road wins against, okay. Michigan has 2 road wins against winning records, but it's Nebraska and Minnesota. It's not the same. All right. Nebraska is winning by default. Someone's got to win when they're going against each other. Nebraska is not a good football team. Like, they have a winning record, and respect that. And Matt Rule's doing a good job in year 1. But my point is that K-State to me, going on the road to those 2 spots where the teams combine for 3 losses. Meanwhile, Nebraska and Minnesota both have 3 losses. Not that I'm comparing Kansas State and Michigan, because Michigan's obviously higher, but I'm just saying the Wildcats, that's pretty remarkable. Not that many teams have done that this far in the season. So they're my number 25 team, those Wildcats. At number 24, they have the same record, but they beat them on a Friday night in Stillwater. And that is the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Look, the logic here is this: they have the same record. Oklahoma State, although you could make an argument that Mizzou's non-con harder than OK State's, Oklahoma State beat them head to head, and I think that's the deciding factor here. And also that win at West Virginia looking pretty fucking good. Double-digit win on the road against a team with a winning record. Yes, I know one of their other road wins is in Tempe against Arizona State, and that's fair. But their losses, South Alabama did beat the shit out of them. And I understand that the argument there. If they didn't have the head-to-head, I would put K-State probably above Oklahoma State. But the head-to-head speaks here. That is why the Cowboys, in my opinion, deserve to be number 24. The mullet at number 23, and this is where I think the debate can be interesting here. At number 23, I got the LSU Tigers. So LSU, their road wins against their wins in general have came on the road against teams with winning records. At Mississippi State, who, let's be honest, they're on the Nebraska train. They're a phony 4-3, right? But at Mizzou, it is a really good win for LSU. However, they have a 21-point loss to Florida State and a 6-point loss at Ole Miss. But once again, Florida State and Ole Miss are both ranked up there. 1.5 road game. I know technically the Florida State game was a neutral site. But I don't expect Mississippi State to have a winning record. So LSU, luckily they get Bama in 2 weeks. That will be one they could really pad their resume, because that Mississippi State one's going to go away. The They beat Army this past week. They move up a spot. They beat the shit out of Army, but Army sucks. So I don't know what that really gets you. But we're looking at the resume, and if you're comparing LSU and Oklahoma State, I think the fact that South Alabama beat the shit out of Oklahoma State in Stillwater is way worse than anything on LSU's resume. So I think LSU deserves to be ahead of Oklahoma State. At number, and by the way, the AP, their number 25 team is James Madison, who I have way fucking higher. The AP still put USC. USC is not in my top 25. Yeah, the AP has UCLA at 23. They're not in my top 25. At number 22, I have the likes of the Flamin' Libs. I don't understand why they don't rank Liberty. I mean, they put USC there. So USC's best win is Arizona and Colorado. Sure. Okay. Liberty's got 4 wins against teams with winning records. Now I know they're not as good as, like, if you had to, Colorado and Arizona would beat anyone on Liberty's schedule. I believe that. However, I still think there's something to the fact of you beating 4 teams with 500 or better records. And look, Bowling Green, one of the wins, Bowling Green beat Georgia Tech. Jacksonville State is one of their wins, and that was a convincing road win. Jacksonville State's going to play South Carolina in like a week. That could really help their resume. The other one's New Mexico State and Florida International. I know there's not a lot of meat on the bone, but undefeated's undefeated. I mean, are we really going to put, I mean, would USC be undefeated with Liberty's schedule? Probably. I think they probably would. But at the same time, what is the point of the season? If USC comes back and beats somebody, I think I would put USC above Liberty. But they got to beat someone. They got to beat someone that, I mean, do we really think Colorado's going to end up with a winning record? I know we're not supposed to look into the future, but I think Liberty's undefeated. They got to speak for, they have 4 wins over teams with winning records. That's more than USC, who only has 2. And I'll rest my case on that. Give me the Flamin' Libs at number 22 there. At number 21, I got the Tulane Green Wave. They played a close game. I mean, they were up 3 touchdowns with North Texas. I don't want people to, you see the final score and you say, oh, they only beat North Texas by 7. They were up 3 scores against North Texas. North Texas just dressed it up, and to credit to the Mean Green, they made it a game. Look, there's not a lot of meat on the bone, and I can see people say, well, how do you have Tulane ahead of LSU? Well, first off, they've only lost once, and they lost without their starting quarterback. I think that shit matters. You look at their other wins, and there is not a lot of meat on the bone. Their best win, South Alabama, who did beat the piss out of Oklahoma State. Another really good win is Memphis, who's 5-2. But besides that, it is a little bare. But at the same time, they only lost 1 game, and that was a closer game. And their loss wasn't as bad as LSU's. Essentially, they both played Ole Miss. Now, I guess you could say that game was closer for LSU, and that was at Ole Miss. But I still don't give a shit. They're without their quarterback. I think Tulane's only lost once, and I think they should be credited for that. And I think the Tulane Green Wave should be the 21st best team in the nation. Tulane's also played what? So what are we at? We're at LSU is what? They are 1-2 on the, no, they're 2-2 on the road, right? They beat Mississippi State and Mizzou. They're actually 2-1 on the road. That's hilarious. No. Wait a second. They lost Florida State. That's practically a road game. So basically 2-2. Fair. I think they're right on the same level. Anyway, let's move along, because at number 20, I am jumping over to the Notre Dame Fighting Irish For a 2-loss team, I think this is the highest rated 2-loss team that I have. And really, I just think Notre Dame's resume is better than anyone else's. The second best would be LSU's. Really, it's the fact, and Notre Dame's resume even took a hit this past week because Duke lost to Florida State. Even though we know Riley Leonard in that situation, I think if he played the rest of the game, they would have beat Florida State because they weren't trailing when he was healthy, essentially, or healthy enough, I should say. That loss took a hit. Then, but the Ohio State loss looks better because Ohio State beat Penn State. However, some of their other wins though haven't looked great. Navy loses to Air Force. Central Michigan loses to Ball State. That's on the Irish's resume. But I do think just the fact that, and I guess Louisville didn't play anybody, so you couldn't get hurt there. But USC lost to Utah. That's another one. So that USC win they had doesn't look as good. However, I still think that resume, if you're comparing that with so LSU has 2 wins over teams that are 500 or better, where Notre Dame has 4, right? Notre Dame also has a 3-point loss to Ohio State and a 13-point loss to Louisville, who are both in the top 15, right? Well, if you're looking at LSU, they have a 21-point loss, so they have a worse loss essentially. And then you have the Ole Miss loss by 6, whatever. I think Notre Dame's resume is much better than LSU's thus far. So that is the logic there on having the Irish at number 20. I'm going to get to number 19, but before I do that, I want to tell you that the Dantabase Top 25 college football rankings are brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Look, Underdog has just introduced Scorchers. Go 5 for 5 and pick up Scorchers and enjoy a spicy 100 times payout. And for a limited time, Underdog's extended their first deposit bonus up to $500. They're giving away $100,000 every Sunday, folks. Yeah. 10 lucky players will win $10,000 each and every Sunday. So watch along, make picks, maybe make a little extra cash over to Underdog's mobile app or website, underdogfantasy.com. When you sign up with the promo code SGPN, Underdog will double your first deposit up to $500. That's Underdog Fantasy, promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by the Underdog NBA contest, which is fantastic. All right. The NBA is back, and to celebrate, we're giving away an NBA Gambling Podcast hoodie. Head on over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA dog to submit a screenshot of you playing NBA Underdog using our promo code SGPN, and one random winner will get a NBA Gambling Podcast hoodie. Just go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/NBA dog. And remember, as always, folks, too, let it ride. I can't help back on the college football experience Dantabase Top 25 here. They have Tennessee at number 21. I want them to make that make sense to me. So like USC has 2 wins against, so they have USC at 24. They have 2 wins against teams that are 500 and better. They have UCLA at 23. They have 2 wins over teams that are 500 or better, right? Tennessee is above all of them. Tennessee, they have what? 1 win over a team that's 500 or better. I don't understand it. Like, I don't understand what they're looking at. And that's a 4-3 Texas A&M. I don't understand what they're looking at that makes them put Tennessee there. Can anyone explain that? I don't understand how they come to that conclusion here. If anything, how about this too? Tennessee has only played 2 road games. They're 0-2. Huh. Interesting. Cause you look and the teams that are behind them, say USC, for example, USC is, what? 2-1 on the road. And, they have 2 wins over teams that are 500 or better. Then you have UCLA. UCLA, the same situation. Like this logic makes no fucking sense. Why is Tennessee there? That makes no sense. Anyway, next up, let's jump on over to number 19, which is the Fresno State Bulldogs. Now, this is one where you could make the case of but Tennessee has 2 losses. Fresno has 2 group Power 5 wins. Now, granted, I think Purdue and Arizona State not very good, but Arizona State just pushed Washington. If we're going to honor that win for Washington, which was a narrow win against Arizona State, we should honor Fresno State's 29-0 dominating performance in the desert. If we're going to honor that Arizona State win for USC, then why are we not honoring it here? Same situation. Ohio, we're giving credit to Ohio State for beating Purdue, but we're not giving it for Fresno State beating Purdue. I don't understand it. Fresno State should be ranked. They only have 1 loss, and it was by 5 points at Wyoming, who's what, 6-2, 5-2, something like that. I think Fresno State's well deserving of that spot, and I think their resume, it's interesting because Wyoming doesn't have as good as a resume right now as Fresno. If Wyoming, because the bye weeks are scattered, but I would put Wyoming did not make my top 25. You're like, well, they have first off, they have 2 losses. Fresno only has 1. Fresno also has the 2 Power 5 wins. So compared to Wyoming's 1 against Texas Tech, that's the logic there. At number 18, let me jump over and talk about the Air Force Falcons. There's not a lot of meat on the bone. This is it's almost like Liberty 2.0. Air Force though has been a covering machine. Yeah, so that style points definitely should matter with the Falcons because they beat the piss out of everyone they play. They only have 1 win though against a team with a winning record, and that's the Wyoming Cowboys. Now I understand. I was at Mountain West Media Day. I got to hear the fact that from what do they say, the horse's mouth, that teams don't want to schedule Air Force, and I believe that. We saw Tennessee pay Army $1.5 million to not play last year. That happens. That really happens. So I'm not going to blame them because of that. I think they want to schedule. One thing we know is the service academies want to schedule aggressively. They're undefeated. They're beating the shit out of everyone. And once again, like if we're going to honor some of these other wins, San Jose State. Oh, that means something for the USC win, but it doesn't mean something for the Air Force win. Why? Air Force is undefeated and they're covering every fucking week for the most part. I think the Wyoming game is the one time Air Force hasn't covered all game or all season. Air Force is deserving to me of number 18. And Troy Calhoun continues to do an unbelievable fucking job. At number 17, let's jump on over and talk about the Oregon Ducks. Now, here's what's interesting here. You kind of have this jumbled mess of a bunch of 1-loss teams that are pretty much on the same level right now, resume wise. So I can understand people arguing against this, but my logic is this: if you're comparing the resumes of the teams that I have right next to them, I think Oregon's is the weakest because Oregon basically hasn't. So Oregon just beat Washington State. That's their best win of the season. The second best win is against Colorado. On the road, Oregon is 1-1, and they very well could have been 0-2. They did get the Texas Tech win, but that's not a win that's looking very good. If anything, the fact it was that close of a game, I think might make you want to say, well, no, I'm sorry. They have the Stanford win now too. So 3. They're 3-0 on the road. But they're 2-1 on the road. What the fuck am I talking about? They lost to Washington. Now you compare that to, and they lost to Washington by 3. Let's compare that to, let's say the next team that we have up. Let's jump on over and talk about the team that I have at number 16. All right. And number 16, I have the Missouri Tigers. I understand the logic here of Oregon lost on the road in a 3-point game. Mizzou lost at home in a 10-point game. Final score says, but that was really a game that it's kind of similar to Oregon's game. Actually, though, I think Mizzou was up more than Oregon was against Washington. Like the time of possession with the lead, Mizzou was almost up that entire game. But then I think when you look at what is the best road win for Oregon, it's at Texas Tech, right? Not a great road win there. Well, what is the best road win for Missouri? It's at 5-2 Kentucky by double digits. I think that's more convincing. I also think they've both played FCSs. Mizzou's FCS is really fucking good. South Dakota. So that matters a little bit. It's a big cocktail of these. Also, the Mizzou beat Kansas State. The non-con is much better. Kansas State's better than Texas Tech. We saw it on the field. So that is the logic there on Mizzou being ahead of the Oregon Ducks. We'll see moving forward, but I also want to compare all these resumes. I wish we had like a graphic we could do. Because at number 15, I have the Oregon State Beavers. So here's the logic here. Oregon State has less Power 5 wins than Mizzou and Oregon by 1 game, I believe. Right. But their resume kind of smacks more to me. They've beaten Utah by 14. Utah is a 7-1 team, and UCLA, right? Who's a 5-2 team, right? So no, Utah 6-1. Sorry. UCLA's 5-2. Those 2 wins by double digits both. And the fact that they only have a 3-point loss against a team with a winning record on the road. I think that is actually the best resume of the 3. I can understand the argument here, but K-State's lost twice. Kentucky's lost twice. Having a win against Utah, it's only lost once, and then UCLA that's only lost twice. Now, I think Oregon State's resume, and this is all like I would have no problem if the AP came out and or the College Football Playoff Committee, whatever that bullshit is with Condoleezza Rice, if they change those 3, because I think it's all like your personal preference on how you do that. But I think those 3 are pretty much, they deserve to be ranked in a similar spot. Shout out to the chat, by the way. Justin Flo says go dog. I'm sorry. Joe Flo says go dogs. And Joe Hackney saying Dukes. JMU. All right, let's continue on. Let's go. But that's the logic there. I think that makes sense too. Let's jump to number 14, where I have the Penn State Nittany Lions. They drop back. I actually believe you can make a case too that Oregon State belongs to be above Penn State. I really believe, like, if you compare the resumes, thank you. Penn State's resume is not as good as Oregon State's. You look at Oregon State's best wins, Utah, UCLA, and Penn State's what? Iowa, West Virginia. I think I just convinced myself to move Oregon State to 14 and Penn State to 15. Noah, can we fix that? Put Oregon State at 14, Penn State at 15, because Penn State, here's another thing, is Penn State's road wins are Northwestern, who has a losing record, and Illinois, who has a losing record. Penn State's 2-1 on the road. I believe Oregon State is what are they? 1-1 on the road. I feel like they lost. They lost at Wazoo. They beat Cal. So okay. Oregon State's wins are way better than Penn State's. You know what I mean? I think Utah. Everyone in the country would take Utah and UCLA over Iowa and West Virginia. I think. Beavs deserved number 14. At number 13. You see that? We just convinced ourselves. Oh, that's how we do this that's how we do this ranking show. All right. Sometimes you're doing the exercise, you don't think about it. At number 13, I do have Ole Miss. Ole Miss only has 1 loss. And I think you got to honor the fact that the 1 loss was at Alabama. It's one of the hardest places to play. They had the lead at halftime, I believe. So, I mean, I know the final score says 14-point loss, but they were in that game some. They did beat Tulane at Tulane. I know Michael Pratt didn't play, but that's a 1-loss Tulane team. As much as I think that win is phony, and I think Ole Miss is probably a little more phony than some of these other teams, you got to honor it. They also beat LSU. We got to honor that. You got to honor the resume. They also have an ass kicking against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech beat Miami. You know, I don't think Ole Miss is legit, but based on resume, if we're going to be honest to the resume, I think Ole Miss deserves number 13. Despite me thinking they're kind of phony. At number 12, and by the way, the AP poll has Ole Miss at 12, so we're kind of somewhat see eye to eye here. At number 12, let's jump on over and talk about the North Carolina Tar Heels. This is a horrible loss. This is what I was thinking. This is one where I had a hard time placing this team. That's a home loss to a bad UVA school. The problem is they've played a lot. They've played more Power Fives and they haven't played an FCS. And they've played more decent competition than almost every team in the nation. Like each week they've played somewhat decent competition until they played Virginia. That was like the worst team on their resume and they lost to them. But I feel like once again, if you don't like the difference between a lot of these other schools is they'll sprinkle in a shitty FCS, bad non-con matchups. North Carolina should get rewarded for their non-con playing, 2 Power Fives in the non-con, South Carolina and Minnesota, as well as Appalachian State. Even though the App State loss looks worse now, the App State win looks worse now, I still think their resume overall, like if you told me other teams had to play that, I think they would have losses too. So maybe I'm being generous to the Tar Heels, but if Oregon State had UC Davis on the schedule, decent FCS, but I'm saying like that's an FCS. Ole Miss had what? They had Mercer, decent FCS, but not much there. They don't really have that. So I think you got to reward that. I think that's why North Carolina is number 12 currently. That's why I had them number 1 last week, essentially. Number 11, the Utah Utes. The 2 Utes. My Cousin Vinny, classic movie. Utah, I actually think you can make the case. I was going through this. So I have 4 1-loss teams, like that'll be the next 4 teams that I name. You might be able to build the case that Utah deserves to be the top of all of them. And that is because short of one of them, they've played more Power Fives than a couple of these, but Utah's wins, double-digit win against Florida, who currently has a winning record. 7-point win against UCLA, which currently has a winning record. A win against USC, which currently has a winning record. When you compare the resumes, I think Utah's got a pretty damn good resume. They also have a win at Baylor. They've played a couple more away games than some of these other teams. They did lose by double digits to Oregon State though. And I think I'm being fair here, but obviously huge road win there at the Coliseum. They're my number 11 team. At number 10, I have the Alabama Crimson Tide. All right. Now this is an interesting debate because Alabama's best road win is at Texas A&M. Utah's best road win is at USC. I'm not sure who I would take to win that game. I want to say I would take USC, but the USC's defense is so bad. But Texas A&M plays so conservatively. I got no idea who's winning that game, but I do believe Bama's resume is a little bit better right now because they have the road win also at Mississippi State, who's 4-3. And then the fact that they have the home wins against Ole Miss and Tennessee, which both have winning records. I think it is slightly, because of Baylor kind of struggling, slightly better than Utah's resume at this very moment. If Baylor, who just beat Cincinnati, if they continue to win, I think the Utes could perhaps pass them. I mean, shit, if Utah beats Oregon this next week because Bama's on bye, they're going to certainly pass them. But that's the argument there. So at number 10, I got the Alabama Crimson Tide. Before I get to number 9, I want to tell you that the college football experience Dantabase Top 25 is brought to you by Hall of Fame Bets. Win bigger by betting smarter this NFL season with Hall of Fame Bets, the sports betting analytics platform for parlays, player props, and game lines. Research every NFL, NBA, MLB, and soccer bet with historical stats and data. Stop betting in the dark and join over 30,000 users researching with Hall of Fame Bets to craft more intelligent, data-driven parlays. Download the Hall of Fame Bets app or visit hofbets.com. Use that promo code SGPN to get 50% off your first month. Start researching, start winning with Hall of Fame Bets. Joe Hackney's in the chat. He says, if Alabama plays Utah, the home team wins, no doubt. Tough place to play. Yeah. Tough to put one higher than the other. I agree. I think I would favor Utah to beat Alabama in Salt Lake City. I would favor Alabama to beat Utah in Tuscaloosa. At number 9, let's jump back to it because I think you can throw them into the mix. And I think people would say, what are you doing, Dundee? I'm only looking at the resume, not hypotheticals. And that is the reason why at number 9, I have the Louisville Cardinal. Louisville's played more Power Fives than everybody. That's got to mean something right now. Louisville's win against Notre Dame looks pretty good too. I know you can sit there and say, wait a second here. Why would you do this? I would take Alabama to probably beat Louisville. Fairly certain I would, but I don't care about what I think, if they played. I'm looking at the resume and I think we're trying to build the case of who is the most deserving based off what they've done this college football season. Cause that's what it should be. And if you look at that, Louisville's got wins. Obviously Louisville has the big time matchup with the Duke Blue Devils on deck. They have a terrible loss at Pitt. Now I understand the logic here. Alabama has a much better loss, but in a way, Alabama lost at home to Texas. Until all of a sudden Texas ain't looking so hot. But Louisville did lose at Pitt by 17. Right now, that score was very misleading. First off, if you look at the yardage, very misleading final score. But I think you have to honor the fact that Louisville has played more Power Fives than Alabama. So if we're gonna honor, okay, I know this sounds ridiculous here, but if we're giving credit to Alabama's wins against winning teams, which they have 4 of them, right? They also have a close game against a South Florida team that's not very good. Well, Boston College has a winning record. Now, I happen to think Boston College is not that good, but Boston College almost beat Florida State. And if we're giving Florida State credit for beating Boston College, then damn it, we better give Louisville credit because Louisville also won by like 40 points. I forget the final score. And then you also have a win at NC State, who currently has a winning record. Louisville has wins against teams with winning records, right? They've played more Power Fives. They've played more road games. You have to reward that thus far. So Louisville, I think at number 9 is, to me, what the resume says. If we're just gonna honor that win for that, my problem with the AP or whoever, the CFP rankings, is they'll use one instance where they'll say, oh well, Florida State won at Boston College. Well, wait a second here. Louisville won against Boston College too. Why are you not giving that the same credit that you're giving? If you're giving it credit here, why are you not giving it credit here? And if Power 5 means so much more, if you're going to keep the group of 5 further back because you really value Power 5 opponents, well then damn it, pay attention to the ones that play the most Power 5s. I'm sorry, that play the most Power 5s, because Louisville has an 11 game Power 5 schedule. Not many other schools do. Utah is one of them. Anyway, the logic there is Louisville at number 9. Obviously, if Bama beats LSU, well, I don't know, because Louisville's gonna if Louisville beats Duke, but if Bama beats LSU, then it gets a little tricky. But we'll see. The system works. We've done this shit for years. All right. At number 8, though, is the Texas Longhorns. So I think I have the best resume for a 1-loss team, but I don't know. I think it's getting close. I think you can make a case for Bama, Utah, Louisville to all be ahead of them. But the logic is this: they did beat Bama, right? That's actually so not Bama. All right, not Bama, but the other ones, yes. They beat Bama by double digits in Tuscaloosa, and their other wins, obviously Baylor. That Baylor win looks better because Baylor beat Cincinnati. Kansas was on bye. Okay, the loss to Oklahoma continues to look good as Oklahoma beats UCF. The win against Houston. We know Houston's a team that doesn't have a winning record, but Wyoming has a winning record. Rice has a winning record. Rice looked pretty good on Thursday night against Tulsa. So their resume actually continued to improve a little bit. I think they're still deserving of being, and I hate Texas. If you listen to me over the years, you know I hate Texas. But I think they don't have an FCS. You got to reward that. I think the Texas Longhorns are deserving of the number 8 spot in the country. I could be okay though with thinking Utah, or Louisville on that level to me. But I still think Texas's win at Bama probably it's better than the win. What's Utah's best win at USC or home to UCLA? Good wins, but kind of think Texas is better for one solo win. At number 8. Let's jump over and talk about the Georgia. I'm sorry, number 7, the Georgia Bulldogs. Can't count. They didn't play. They got the world's biggest cocktail party. But I'll tell you this: their resume, very Air Forces. So out of all the undefeated teams, there's only 2 teams that have just one win against a team with a winning record. So let me get this straight here. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 undefeated teams left. Only 2 have played and beaten just one team with a winning record. Air Force is the first one with Wyoming by 7. And Georgia is the second with Kentucky by 38 or something. Very convincing. But that's the only win against a team with a winning record that they have right now. Yes, go look at Georgia's other opponents. It's not pretty. Auburn's got a losing record. Vanderbilt's got a losing record. South Carolina's got a losing record, and not even close to 500. Then you look at Ball State sucks ass. UAB sucks. Shit, you can make a case UT Martin's their second best win because they're doing pretty good in the FCS. That resume is the worst, from Power 5 opponents right now. For Power 5 schools, I should say. They're the worst resume at this very minute. Now, if they beat Florida, that will give them a second win against a team with a winning record. That's a step in the right direction. But right now, that resume sucks. And they should be, in my opinion, at number 7. Yes, you're undefeated. Yes, you've done what you had to do, but not a lot of meat on the bone there. At number 6, I got the Michigan Wolverines. And here's the thing. I almost put Michigan at number 5. And this is a good argument. Michigan actually has 5 wins against teams with winning records. The UNLV and Bowling Green are 500 or better, I should say, because Bowling Green's 500. Michigan did not play a Power 5 in the non-con. That drives me crazy. I know they got the cheating allegations going on. I don't know. Not here to talk about that. The UNLV win does look better and better. The Bowling Green win looks better because Bowling Green's 500. Bowling Green also beat Georgia Tech in Atlanta. But really, what's helping their resume, in my opinion, is Rutgers is currently 6-2. 6-2. Noah behind the scenes saying UNLV still hasn't beat a team with a winning record by the way. But you only got, it's not their fault. Some of these other teams on the schedule, their best win is Rutgers. That's Michigan's best win. They're 6-2. I don't look at I locked up Rutgers over, what was it, 3.5, 4 wins. I also called for them to make a bowl. I feel very good about Rutgers, but I've also watched them closer than I think most schools. I don't think Rutgers is that good. I think Rutgers is benefiting from the fact that the rest of the Big 12, I'm sorry, the rest of the Big 10, not named Penn State. Rutgers hasn't played Penn State, Ohio State, or Michigan. Or Michigan's the one team they've played. So Rutgers, believe it or not, has 0 wins against teams 5. Like so, their wins. UNLV is 6-1. Rutgers is 6-2. Both of those teams, both of their 12 wins are against 0 teams that are 500 or better. Fucking unbelievable. But you have to honor that right now. I think you have to honor it. Also, Nebraska's 4-3, Minnesota's 4-3, even though that ridiculous call in the Iowa game. I think they're phony personally. I think everyone on Rutgers is the best team that they have played, in my opinion. Like I think Rutgers would beat Nebraska. I think Rutgers is a tiny bit better than Minnesota. Maybe that's a wash. Rutgers is certainly better than Bowling Green, and I think Rutgers would beat UNLV because Rutgers defense I think could be an issue. But it's a better resume than Georgia's. It's a lot better right now. Maybe and because I do think Rutgers could lose out and end up 6-6. But I think Michigan's resume is certainly, and I actually think you can make a case Michigan should be higher than the team I'm going to do next, but I'm not going to do that because the team that I have next at number 5 is the James Madison Dukes. And I know I got some comments saying I'm a fucking idiot for having JMU in the top 10 above, Michigan or Georgia. No, I'm not saying if they played, I would take Michigan to beat JMU. If Georgia played JMU, I would obviously take Georgia to beat JMU. But I think I've made my point by saying I'm not looking at the hypothetical. I'm looking at what has been done on the field. James Madison, do I need to repeat this, has more road wins than every single team in the top 10. Also, James Madison has 4 wins against teams with winning record, and a couple of them are on the road. And I'll be honest, you want to compare? So Michigan, Rutgers is their best win. I think we would all agree. I think if you had to rank these, I would say probably, so Michigan's 5 wins over teams 500 or better. If I had to rank the order here, I would say Rutgers is probably 1, Minnesota 2, UNLV 3, Nebraska 4, Bowling Green 5. If I had to. I'm going to be honest. I think every single one of JMU's wins are better than, like, I would take Troy to beat Rutgers. I would so JMU beat Troy, who won the Sun Belt last year. JMU also beat South Alabama. South Alabama beat Oklahoma State in Stillwater by 27 points. I think South Alabama would beat Rutgers if they played tomorrow. JMU beat Georgia Southern. I kind of think Georgia Southern would beat Rutgers. I think that's close. That's close. And JMU won at Marshall. I kind of think Marshall and Rutgers are very similar. Both offensively challenged. If anything, I might lean Marshall because Rasheen Ali, but I think JMU's, the fact they've played way more road games too. They've played they've played I think one more road game than Michigan. And Michigan's played 3 now, I believe. Michigan State, Nebraska, and Minnesota. But you have to honor that. And dude, they played 3 straight weeks on the road. Got to respect that. And that Virginia win looks better. They just beat North Carolina. That was like one of their worst wins. I can understand the argument. Michigan's beaten 5 teams 500 or better. JMU's beaten 4, but I would argue that JMU's 4, I think, would beat the best win on Michigan's schedule. Let's go. At number 4 for me. Now we jump over to the good old. My screen went dark. Oklahoma Sooners. Man, and you could do this. You could say, hey, Michigan's got 5 wins over teams 500 or better. Oklahoma's only got 3. It's true. Michigan also has more road wins than Oklahoma. However, let's not bullshit ourselves. The Texas win is like 5 times better than anything Michigan's done. Oklahoma also has a 17-point win against SMU, who just beat Temple 55-0 in Philly. I know it's Temple, but SMU has a winning record. They also beat Iowa State by 30, and Iowa State has a winning record. And I'll be honest, even Oklahoma's losses to not losses. Their wins against teams with losing records like UCF. UCF I think would smack Rutgers if they played right now. I would lay 10 points with UCF against Rutgers if they played right now. But I think Oklahoma's resume is better than Michigan's. The strength of the opponent is a lot better than Michigan's. So that's the logic there. And even before we thought Arkansas State and Tulsa are dog shit, and I still kind of do. However, they've come around. They've came around lately. They're like pushing 500 now. So the resume looks a little bit better. I know Oklahoma had that series canceled against Georgia. They were supposed to play in the non-con, didn't happen. So in very similar fashion to Michigan, they've avoided the Power 5 game in the non-con. Their resume is still better. I don't care what anyone says. It's pretty obvious to me. So that at number 4 is Oklahoma. At number 3, I got the Washington Huskies. Win ugly against Arizona State. I know the first half was in the rain, but Washington their resume is not like super amazing. They have only 2 wins against teams with winning records in Oregon and Arizona. But I happen to think, well, first off, they have more Power 5 wins than Oklahoma. Them and Michigan share road wins at Michigan State, but I still think the Oregon win and the Arizona win better than anything on Michigan's schedule. Also, I think the Oregon win is similar to the Texas win for Oklahoma. And then when you add in Arizona, and then you add in the fact they've played 1 more Power 5 than Oklahoma, that's the logic on me putting the Huskies above Oklahoma. I think it's close though. But the fact they've gone to battle 1 more time against a Power 5, which the CFP committee and the AP Top 25 have given such value to over the years. It's not even me. I'm doing it based off their system of, disrespecting the group of 5 essentially. You have to honor that then. If you're going to do that, you got to stay consistent across the board. And I think we're doing that by putting Washington ahead of Oklahoma. At number 2, I got the Ohio State Buckeyes. Hey, they dominated Penn State. I mean, it was an ugly game, but I know the Ohio State offense wasn't great. But the truth is, Ohio State's resume, you could argue they deserve to be number 1 because they have wins, pretty good big time wins here. I mean, when you add in the Notre Dame win, resume wise, you could make a case that Ohio State has the best resume. At Notre Dame, they got the road win there against a quality opponent. I know their other road win was Indiana and Purdue, and they suck ass, but they're 3-0 on the road. They beat Penn State. That's a top 20 team. Maryland has a very good record, even though we know they're counterfeit. And Western Kentucky has a winning record. They beat them by 53. Gotta honor it. I know they played in FCS, but you gotta honor right now Ohio State's best wins. Like, is there a team that has a better resume than, like, if you took the 2 best wins for each team? At Notre Dame and home to Penn State is going to be in the conversation for best wins of right now, two games in. The only one that I think might be better, and I'm going to say it is the Florida State Seminoles. At number 1, I have Florida State. Look, I personally think if Riley Leonard played the rest of that game, you probably would have lost because I thought Duke was having success on the line of scrimmage against Florida State. And I also thought The refs helped Florida State in a critical moment. However, Florida State did what they had to do in the fourth quarter to get that dub, and that is a nice win. And it's a convincing win. If you look at the final score, even though we know it was a lot closer of a game because Riley Leonard got injured. But if we're going to look at the final score, which is what the committee will always say, they won by his game control. Look at that. 18-point win. No, Florida State's resume. They have a 21-point win against LSU. They have a win at Clemson, although it looks worse because Clemson's only 4-3. That is a quality win. Guess what? Boston College has a winning record. I know that was a shaky game, just a 2-point win at BC. But then you add in Duke and you have a pretty fucking solid resume. Also Syracuse, they beat the shit out of Syracuse by 38. Syracuse still has a winning record. So you have to honor that, even though we know it's phony. And if Virginia Tech beats Syracuse on Thursday, Virginia Tech will then be 500. So it's only going to help their resume, and Syracuse will still be above 500. Either way, though, I think Florida State has the best resume right now. I also think they've had some very convincing wins by score. If you look at that shit, the Duke game, I know the backup quarterback came in, but that's not their problem. All right. The LSU game was dominating. They won by 21 against Brian Kelly and his family. All right. And then, they had some close calls against Clemson and Boston College, but then they had a dominating performance against Virginia Tech and Syracuse. Got to honor it. They haven't played an FCS yet. They get North Alabama in November. Even though Southern Miss is practically an FCS, I think they have the best resume right now. Florida State, number 1, the Seminoles. Folks, that's our show. Maybe you got an opinion about it. Maybe you think I am a fucking idiot. Well, that's all fair. And maybe you're right. Brett McMurphy, Nebraska adds a 2025 home game with Houston Christian. See, folks, if you're watching youtube.com/the college experience, Houston Christian's like the worst FCS they're one of like the bottom 5 worst FCSs. So shout out to Nebraska for challenging themselves. I think this is a way more honest top 25 than anything out there. I think the resume speaks for itself, but we ignore the resume to do pretty much. Like I have so much problems. I think they do it to align TV ratings and stuff, but I think they don't realize that hurts programs. That costs programs millions of dollars, whether it's season ticket sales, whatever it may be, from TV ratings all the way down. When you slap that number 5 on or number 10 ranking or whoever on a team, all of a sudden more eyeballs watch. So if you watch behind the scenes, you kind of see where the money goes. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of like, wait, this is bullshit. I made the argument about Louisville and Notre Dame last week. I think that's a clear example of what I mean is they're doing that to draw on the TV ratings. And unfortunately that this also has a big outcome on the actual sport. Until we get a large enough playoff, it makes no sense. The logic makes no sense. They move the goalpost every other week. So I'm not even happy with 12. We need more than 12 because 12 is still not right. Arkansas just played a month on the road. That shit doesn't happen to other schools in the SEC. There's a reason why that happens. All right, folks, subscribe to the College Football Experience. All right. We are on Twitter at TCE on SGPN. Give me a follow or give us a follow. I'm on Twitter at TheColbyD. Follow away. Please, if you can hop on over to iTunes, give me a 5-star review. Feel free to call me a fucking idiot if you want. All right. Yeah. What else? Get the SGPN app. It's free to download in the App Store and Google Play Store. College basketball previews are they're flying off the shelves, folks. We got a couple more slated for tonight, so stick around. As the season tips on November 6th. On November 5th, we're picking games, baby. Also, check out the FCS College Football Experience, which I host, and also the College Baseball Experience. Myself and Noah Beanick goes into full swing in February. That's just right around the corner. All right. Also, check out the Big 12 Experience. It's the Big 12. They talk anything Big 12. All right. Football, basketball, baseball, shit. Probably find out about the bobsledding team the Sooners have. All right. Check out the Sports Gambling Podcast every Friday from Las Vegas on VSiN, VSIN. That is Brent Musburger's network on YouTube TV. So check it out. Big 12 shows is live right now, by the way, folks. The Bog 12, Noah Bina calling it. Folks, subscribe to the College Football Experience. This is the Dantabase Top 25. We're back every fucking week doing this. All right. Remember, tomorrow night we got our Week 9 preview and pick show where we go through every single game in the FBS, and then on Thursday we go through every single game in the FCS. All right. Subscribe, tell a friend. Until next time, this is the College Football Experience. You better start thinking about yours, and we out of here.
Run and shoot.